You guys do what? Find out tonight on tonight's episode of Talk Gnosis on what are the daily practice of Gnostics. Welcome to Talk Gnosis for October 16th, 2013. I'm Bishop Canterbury, and as usual, joining me is my lovely co-host, Bishop Lainey Peterson. Hello, Lainey.
Hello, Bishop Ken.
How are you this evening?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm very happy that we're being joined tonight by Brother John Pedrahita. How are you, Brother John?
I'm doing very well, Bishop. Thank you very much.
Well, this should be an interesting show tonight. Brother John is a priest. He's a martial artist. He's a Mason. He's a Templar. He's a man with many different interests. And tonight we are going to be having a round table discussion on what is kind of the daily practice of Gnostics. I get this question all the time. What do you guys do differently than anyone else? What makes you a Gnostic? Why don't we start this off with Lainey? Lainey, is there anything you do particularly different than maybe those in mainstream Christianity per se?
You know, as far as my religious practices go, I don't know that they're that different. I mean, there's scripture reading, there's prayer. I'm also involved in Gurdjieff's Fourth Way work, and that involves the practice of sitting, which is a kind of a form of meditation in which we become very aware of our bodies, and so that's the Gurdjieff Fourth Way work is actually probably my predominant spiritual practice. But in addition to that, I read my Bible and I pray, and I think that's something that a lot of Christians do, so I don't think it's all that different. The main differences would be in my Fourth Way work.
How about you, Brother John? Anything that you would say that's kind of different on your path? I mean, I know with you having especially like a martial arts background, that probably brings, I would assume, some form of Eastern maybe differences into your practices?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, as a young boy when I started the martial arts, 12, 13 years old, my instructor was a walker of the Fourth Way of Gurdjieff's work.
Oh.
And so throughout, and this was my first teacher. And so throughout the martial art training as a child, all of our moving forms and dances and moving meditation was always done with that observation, that consciousness, that awareness of body, self, environment, and synchronizing breath with movement. A lot of that in the martial arts. So as a young man, yes, there was a lot of that free-flowing movement type of work that was done with the body. A lot of interactive physical, spiritual work.
Interesting.
Yes,
Awesome.
One of the things I think I'm asked at times, what do you think is kind of one of the most important things? For me, what I think I would tell anyone who's kind of starting the Gnostic path is kind of stillness of the mind. I think only through stillness of the mind can we get unity with ourself and unity, with the divine. Now, how does one go about that? I think everybody can probably argue there's many, many ways, For me, that can be a daily practice of the simple, like Jesus prayer, for an example. Something that gives, again, a lot of stillness. I think that there's many good books on the topics. Some of the things that I find interesting, some esoteric orders, for an example, have like daily adorations to the sun. They get up in the morning, they do their adoration to the sun. They do it in the afternoon, they do it at dinner time, they do it again before they retire to bed. That's really not that much different than really praying the liturgy of the hours. And I would recommend, anyone, if they're asking my advice, get into kind of that daily habit of prayer several times a day, and try to get that stillness of mind. And that's way easier said than done. Getting rid of those distractions.
Yep.
Is there anything that either one of you have that you can recommend to help people kind of get through those distractions when one is going through prayer or meditation? Any exercise that you have found helpful?
Yes. Well, you know, as a Gnostic, I can't. It's interesting because when we get that question, rather when I get that question, what does a Gnostic do, or what can I do? It's a hard path to walk because I cannot really say to another, do this. I have to tell that person. I can recommend, I could share what's worked for me, but I have to encourage them to walk their own path. Now, as far as myself, one analogy, in martial arts, prior to getting into the pure form of the art, they usually start off with a warm-up, a stretching, maybe a seated meditation, and then you'll breathe, and then you'll get into the actual core of the class. And similar in spiritual practice, it will be up to the person, I would say, as they ask with time, to develop their own set of ritual that helps them go deeper. So when that they begin, as for myself, I will begin with breathing deeply, centering, beginning to still the mind. And as I go deeper after those 7 sacred breaths, then I will begin with maybe an invocation, a prayer to the sacred, and then proceed through my sequence of events until I get into that deep abyss, or that stillness within my heart and within my mind. But I would say that it's up for each person to kind of develop that rhythm so that they can rest and find that stillness.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
The emphasis that I think I would place on, and we've kind of all touched on it here, is this idea of practice is what can help bring you into an attention of a different quality. Because a lot of times our attention, we talked about stillness of the mind. Well, our attention's constantly being dragged hither and yon. There's all kinds of distractions around us, even in our own homes, even in churches. So I think in many cases we have to train our attention through practice. I mean, a person can have a talent for music, for example, or a talent for art. Doesn't mean they're any good at it. They're not going to get good at it until they've practiced and continue to do so. So we've talked a little bit, Bishop Ken, about Liturgy of the Hours, and I think that that's a really important and very useful practice, in part because the person can start with doing, say, one prayer during a certain time during the day, and then gradually start adding in the other prayers. And it's a really nice program. There's some flexibility with the hours, the amount, the time that you have to get that prayer in. And I think it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful way for a person to start, particularly if a person is from, say, a Protestant background like you and I are, Bishop Ken, where that kind of what we would consider to be formulaic or ritualistic prayers weren't a part of that. But setting up time during the day, we understand about hours. We understand about work hours, school hours. It's time for this, it's time for that. And we can say it's time for prayer. And I think that's really a very good way to start. I would personally, just as a recommendation, Phyllis Tickle is a well-known expert on American religion. She's been involved with religious publishing for 50 years, something like that. And she's actually done an ecumenical series on the hours. And they're absolutely wonderful. She has a short form and long form for every season, and they're absolutely wonderful. So they're called the Divine Hours series, and you can even get them on Kindle. And so if people are interested in this discipline and want to kind of look at an ecumenical Christian, but definitely ecumenical series, I would strongly recommend Phyllis Tickle's work.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. For a lot of people, I think the resources. Somebody simply goes to Google, they Google Liturgy of the Hours. I mean, you can find some very good resources with all of the various daily prayers. And I have Gnostics ask, well, do we have to do those? Is there anything different? Well, actually, there is. I would highly recommend 2 works, both by June Singer. No cover on this one, but it's called the Gnostic Book of Hours. The other one by June Singer is called Knowledge of the Heart. Both of these are great books for one who is maybe looking for kind of more of those Gnostic hours of prayers. They come from various Gnostic scriptures. But I think the important point is whether you're doing these or whether you're doing something more traditional. It's the process of doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the doing that helps with the stillness of the mind. One of the things that I also recommend, especially to my clergy, but even to non-clergy, because we can always send them off with the pre-blessed and sanctified Eucharist, is daily liturgy, daily mass. It doesn't have to be a full-blown hour and a half liturgy. It can be something, if you're a priest, of the simple consecration of the host with the proper words, body and blood of our Lord the Christ, keeping into life eternal, but again, kind of fill himself with that divine act. I also find it important, and I also encourage everyone to kind of try to set up a sacred space and environment. You were mentioning, Lainey, that it's important that people make time. It is important to make time, but sometimes, like you said, we get the distractions of the world around us. We get the cell phones ringing, we get the TV blaring, the kids, we get our pets. It's nice, I think, to kind of have that kind of sacred space where one can kind of really focus. Now, if we're going to be doing this several times a day, sometimes that's impossible, but I think that if we at least do this when we're home, it gets us into that mindset. So when we step out into the world, and maybe we do take a few minutes to ourselves, maybe in the afternoon for prayer or for meditation, that our minds are able to go there, I think, a little bit easier. Your guys' thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think that's I think it's really important. What about you, Brother John? You're so involved with so many things.
Absolutely. Setting that sacred space, that sacred time. It's like food. It's like my vitamins in the morning. It's like my water in the morning. These are the essentials, the basic essentials that my complete self needs in order to thrive, not just survive. And I heard that one from Joel Osteen, and I loved it when he said, "We're not trying to survive. We're trying to thrive." And so these are the things that move us into that thriving existence. And so, yes, absolutely, setting that sacred space. Synchronicity, if you want to take it up and synchronize your lifestyle with the rising and the setting of the sun. As a Gnostic myself, I would rise as the sun rises. And fortunately, I live near the beach, so I could see the sunrise on the horizon of the ocean. And my body, my internal biological clock, will awaken with the sun. And so I become more connected with my environment, my beings, my neighbors, loving my neighbors, essentially that golden rule: love God and love your neighbors. So, and love being so important as a Gnostic, and for myself, is to reflect on the heart-centered consciousness of love, God's love, immense, unconditional, merciful, boundless, omnipresent love for all people.
Absolutely. Brother John, I wanted to kind of segue into your martial arts. You are not the first Gnostic or esotericist who has been proficient in the martial arts, and I'm curious, how does that inform your spiritual practice?
A very good question, and because it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Because of course, I do not. I am a practitioner of ahimsa, which is, as you know, peace. And I would definitely never, ever want to hurt anybody, and especially not even in my worst days. But it was suitable for me as a young man growing up and going through the different developmental stages, finding myself, and as a young man full of adrenaline and testosterone and wanting to prove myself. So it was very useful. And how it's found its way now into the martial arts is, in the martial arts, we have a common expression, which I'm not doing much of right now, which is talk little, do, and rather do. So, and we're not much talkers. We're more just do it. And that's the martial art kind of mentality. So in the spiritual life, that's the kind of perspective we do. Kind of find what works for you. Straight, effective, don't complicate, simple, straight to the point, and just do it. And no excuses at the end of the day. But as far as that interactive prayer, physical health is very important for myself. watching nutrition, discipline of your diet, what you're eating, whether you eat with, whether you gluttonize or you eat with control and observation. Are you observant of the taste buds as the food is going in? Are you observant of those automatic behavioristic type of components of the self that just naturally do? But are you observant of that as it kind of goes down your esophagus or into your stomach, as the water is then absorbed by your physiological body? As you eat, are you watching TV while you eat? Are you chit-chatting, mindless chatter? Or do you turn off the TV, turn off the radio, gently put your fork down, eat, chew, put it back down, as you have some maybe classical music and some artistic impressions? And I think Gurdjieff was very big about that, the fourth way work, especially when eating and doing these little things like brushing teeth that seem so normal. So yes, I don't know. I'm just babbling away. I hope that's a little insight on my life.
Delighted to hear this, because you're talking about, in the Gurdjieff work, we're talking about the work being in life and the self-observation. And this was, Mr. Gurdjieff was very big on, we're not in a monastery, we're doing all this in life, and this becomes part of our spiritual practice in the sense that we are observing ourselves and seeking to become conscious while we do those necessary everyday tasks.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to have to try to wrap this up a little bit. Real quick, I want to see if there's any quick book recommendations. I know one that I want to get out to everyone is highly recommend for practice is Meditations on the Tarot. Yep. So I would highly recommend that, along with this one work, Knowledge of the Heart by June Singer. Anything you guys want to add as far as recommendations?
I would like to recommend Inner Peace by Paramahansa Yogananda, How to Be Calmly Active and Actively Calm. And it really helps nurture that stillness, that inner core of peace within all of us that we can try to access at will and nurture and build upon. So I would say that's a good book that worked for me in my path.
Fantastic. How about you, Bishop Laney?
Well, I think, the book by Phyllis Tickle, I recommend to people who are interested in going into the Liturgy of the Hours. I think that's something that's really important. The other thing that I might recommend, even though it's more about community life, is The Rule of Benedict by Sister Joan Chittister, in which she kind of deconstructs the Benedict's famous rule for monastics and explains why these practices and rules are a part of their daily life and their spiritual significance. And it's a very interesting perspective.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a really interesting discussion. Again, one of these discussions that I think we could probably continue more than our allotted time, and it would definitely like to maybe have you on the show in the future again, Brother John. Again, I want to thank you. Thank you, Brother John, for joining us today. Do you want to let people know where they can find you on the internet?
Yes, absolutely. A basic website that I have is www.templeorder.com, and I have some self-publications on there on the warrior monk type of mindset and mentality. And there's also a Facebook group called the Temple Order of St. Michael Archangel that if you type in, you'll be able to find.
Fantastic.
Great.
Again, thank you so much. Laney, you want to take us out of the show today?
Sure. As always, we're very grateful that you joined us for the show, and we look forward to hearing from you. And you can find us online, certainly on our YouTube channel. You can also send us an email at talkgnosis@gnosticnyc.com. And you can, of course, visit us on our Facebook page as well. And coming up on Talk Gnosis, we're going to be having a special discussion with an esotericist who is also a licensed psychotherapist. Alan Salmi will be talking to us about how esotericists and Gnostics can choose quality mental health care for themselves that addresses our unique needs. And just rolling on out here, this has been a production of Gnostic NYC. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the views of Gnostic NYC or any other group. No animals were harmed during the production of the show. And for more Talk Gnosis, tune in every Wednesday for a new episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother John.